Welcome to the Fundamentals of a Squat series. This is part 1. So some of you may have watched my short video showing an option for how to get off the floor with ease. And this lesson will show you the building blocks for that video, as well as improving your ability to easily get into a squatting position. So why is squatting important in pregnancy? Squatting is more than just having flexible hip joints. It's really a coordination of spinal mobility, hip and ankle flexibility. No matter which position you deliver in, on your back, your side, even in a literal squat, we need all the parts to coordinate together, the spine, the hips, and the ankles, to allow for an open birth canal and ease of getting that baby out into the world. So starting here, we're going to start in standing. Spread your feet a comfortable distance apart. Just going to have you, for reference, drop down into a squat if this is possible for you right now. And notice the openness, or maybe lack thereof, of your hips, your low back, and your heels. See how that feels right now. We'll come back to this at the end of the lesson and see if anything has changed. So come on up to standing. So this particular Feldenkrais lesson is more active than most. So we're really going to focus on pacing yourself, taking as many breaks as is needed. Even if I don't cue a rest, you can always take a break whenever you need to, come back to it. I promise you won't get lost. You could even pause the recording and come back when you're ready. We really don't want to go into that fatigue. So we're going to start here in standing. You're going to lower your hands down to the ground until you can place them flat on the ground in front of you. So you're also going to try and keep your heels flat on the ground if you can. So bend your knees to make this easy and as comfortable as possible. We're not trying to stretch out your hamstrings, so definitely bend those knees. This is also not a downward facing dog position. It's likely to be a much shorter stance than that. So once you get there, come back up to standing once again. You're going to go back and forth between these two positions several times. Each time you can play a bit with the position of your hands and feet, finding an easier way to do this. You can also let your head hang down and be free. Take note of how this movement comes together and how it feels today. I'll come up to standing once again and take a rest. And then lower your hands down to the floor again. Leave them there this time. We'll call this the 4-point position. The 4 points of your hands and feet. We'll spend much of the lesson today in this position, so begin to find some comfort here. Relaxing your neck. Let your head hang down and start to find the best position for your hands and feet. Begin to experiment with different places, maybe farther apart, closer together. Play with the angle of the feet, turned out or straight forward. The hands can be wider or narrower, or they can be closer to the feet or further from the feet. You can also play with the weight distribution of the hands and feet. The hands can take more of the weight or less of the weight. Find the right angle to bend the knees, more or less, whatever's easier. And then come back to standing and rest again. Remember, you can rest whenever you need to. And then go ahead and lower your hands down to the floor again and get comfortable here. And from this position, start to look up towards the horizon and then down back between the legs so you can look behind you. I'm going to go back and forth between these two positions a few times. And notice what happens to the height of your pelvis as your head moves up and down. There's a kind of inverse relationship there. So as the head rises, the pelvis must drop. And as the head drops, the pelvis must rise. Just notice that rhythm and connection as you move back and forth. And rest when you're feeling ready and standing or sitting on the floor, whichever you prefer. So as I mentioned, you may notice some fatigue in this lesson, and that's okay. But as soon as you reach a level where your awareness is getting directed to not only exactly how you're moving, but how tired you are, that's a good time to take a rest. Because at that point, the lesson becomes counterproductive and you really aren't learning anything. And then if you're ready, come back to your 4 points. Continue to find and refine the best place for your hands and feet. Notice if the weight falls to the inside of the feet or the outside of the feet. See if you can change that so it makes it easier to stay there. So now start looking as far as you can to the left and then to the right, as if you're looking to the sides and behind you. Notice as you look how the pressure changes under your feet as you turn. Do you feel like one heel wants to lift off the floor? You can allow one heel to come up and allow for a little move or turn. Notice how your pelvis and spine participates with the movement. Feel the movement in your side ribs. Once again, notice the relationship of your head and pelvis. So as the head goes right, the pelvis goes left, and vice versa. You can leave that and rest when you're done playing with that option. Rest in standing or seated anytime. Make sure your breathing is under control. It can be quite challenging to invert ourselves like this for long periods of time, especially when we are so top heavy. So really do pace yourself. If you are ready and willing, come back to your 4 points. Explore the floor with the palm of your right hand, like you're painting the floor with the right hand, trying to cover as much ground as possible, but your feet and your left hand are glued to the floor. That's your one constraint. You're going to try and cover the space in front of you, to the right, explore over to the left, between your legs a little bit. How can you reach behind you? Do you have to turn the palm over, turn the hand around? Feel how the powerful muscles of your hips and thighs support you. And then come down to rest in sitting. So in this lesson, we're revisiting something you did quite a lot when you were a toddler, actually. Moving around in this transition zone between crawling and standing, you're using your hands. We actually see toddlers in this position a lot when they're learning to stand and squat, reaching for things on the floor. If you have older children, I'm sure you'll recognize this position. So hopefully in this lesson, we'll start to recover some of the toddler's excellent moving abilities in these positions. Come back to 4 points and start painting the floor with the left hand. See if it's easier than the right. This is really a movement of your whole body. There's coordinated movements of your knees, your ankles, your feet, your hips, your pelvis, your spine, your shoulders. It all works together. And now if you're willing, you're going to paint the floor with both hands at the same time. You can make different patterns, large spiraling patterns. You might find that you're much more comfortable standing more upright with the weight in your bent legs as you do this to maintain your balance and stability. And then rest. We have to keep in mind that this work is not designed to strengthen your muscles. It's an awareness exercise. So if you start to be fatigued, once again, take a break. We're really not looking to strain or effort. And if you're ready, come back to 4 points. This time you're going to lift just the right hand from the floor and put it back down. We'll do that many times. Notice what part of the hand comes off the floor first. Or does it all come off as one block? So lift your hand in such a way that the heel of the hand comes off first, then the fingers peel off the ground. So the hand is as relaxed as possible when you lift. Lift the fingers off the floor just barely, then return the fingers to the floor again, then the heel of the hand. Kind of like you're pawing the floor very gently. Remember to breathe. Make sure you're returning the hand to the floor completely before lifting it again. And then rest in sitting for a bit. Part of what we're doing here is finding the most efficient way to shift the support from 4 points of support to 3. So all toddlers go through this when they're shifting from 2 points for standing and then 1 point for walking. We're just investigating how we can best utilize our other points of contact to make it the most efficient way for stability and mobility. Come back to 4 points. And I will say all of these 4-point movements can be done in a hands and knees position if it becomes too fatiguing to maintain hands and feet. You might even notice that I'll go to the hands and knees position a few times in the video if you're watching, just to preserve my energy. So this time, hands and knees or hands and feet. In 4 points, you're going to lift the left hand from the floor and then replace it to the floor. Gently and rhythmically. What do you do to lift the hand? Is it a movement that only happens in the arm or the shoulder? Does it involve more of the body? Do you use the pelvis in some way to help? Do you shift the pelvis to the side, rotating? Just play with different options. Find which way makes the hand the lightest and most accurate and sensitive in how it leaves the floor and how it returns to the floor. The more parts of you that can become involved, the more quality of movement you will have. And rest. You'll come back to 4 points. This time you'll bring your attention to your right foot. You'll lift that right foot from the floor and place it back down again. Doing this many times. See how smooth and quiet you can make this lifting and lowering. When you lift the foot, do you jerk it into the air and then let it crash to the ground, or do you let it rise and fall softly? You maybe can imagine there's a scale under your right foot, and you want the numbers to rise and fall smoothly on the scale instead of gyrating wildly up and down as you raise and lower the right foot. And then rest in sitting. So when you lift your one foot off the floor, we're really removing a major point of support. That support has to shift to the other 3 limbs on the ground. And there are many strategies for this, and some will be more efficient than others. So return to the 4 points position again, and we'll begin to look more closely at this question. So we'll lift the left foot from the floor many times. Where does your weight shift? That right hand, the left hand, and your right foot, most likely. Which is the most efficient? Now alternate. Lift your right foot, then immediately lift the left foot. Try and keep your hands on the ground. Let your feet rise and fall as softly as possible. Go back and forth and feel what parts of your body works to lift the leg. Do you lift right from the hip joint, or is there something lifting higher up? Maybe the muscles deep in the waist are helping to pull the leg up. So we're not just bending the knee, lifting the foot off the floor, we're using our torso to help lift the leg up and place it back down. And then rest. Check in with your breathing. What moves to let you know you're breathing? Maybe the belly, the side ribs, the chest, the breastbone, the shoulders. Enjoy this rest. Bring your breath back to a comfortable pace. And if you are ready and willing, come back to 4 points. Remember, you can do this on hands and knees if that's more sustainable for you. So this time, we're going to lift the right foot and the right hand at the same time. So you have to shift everything over to the left side, maybe sit into that left hip a little bit. And notice whether you're able to lift and lower the right foot and hand with control, or if they crash towards the ground. Good, and then you'll do the same thing on the other side. See if you can raise and lower the foot and hand exactly at the same time. And then alternating side to side, rocking back and forth, kind of like a cat kneading a blanket. Remembering that nice hand placement, heel, palm, fingers come off, fingers, palm, heel of the hand comes back on. A nice kneading, pawing movement. And then rest. I'll make this a bit more dynamic. When you're ready, you'll come back to 4 points. Going to march back and forth, left and right. We just did this. You're going to keep that rhythm and pattern as you begin to walk forward a few paces and backward. Good. Always rest when you need to. This is really the most active we ever get in a Feldenkrais lesson. So the right hand and the right foot propel you forward, and then you shift your weight, and the left hand and the left foot come forward, and then come backwards. You're walking on hands and feet. Take breaks when you need to. You can always try coming sideways like a crab. So right foot, left hand brings you to the right. You meet that with your left hand, left foot a couple of times, and then come back to the left. You're crawling around like a crab. And then rest and sitting when you're done with that. So we call this type of movement homolateral locomotion pattern. So really it's the same side moving at the same time. And this is really not what coordinated adults do when they walk. Coordinated adults walk with a cross-lateral pattern where the arm moves with the opposite leg. But toddlers go through a developmental stage where they crawl and walk in this homolateral pattern. So this rudimentary weight shifting they go through, and that basic pattern is a building block for the more sophisticated movement that they learn later, which turns into that cross-lateral pattern that we walk in today as adults. But you may also notice that as people begin to lose their function due to old age or other issues, they tend to revert back to this homolateral pattern as well. You might even be noticing as your belly gets larger and throws your center of gravity off, you might be reverting to this homolateral pattern of walking, kind of like a stilted Frankenstein walk, which is not super efficient, no. So if you want to work in this cross-lateral pattern, come back to 4 points and we'll explore that a little bit. Remembering you can do all of this in hands and knees if that's where you're choosing to be right now. So lift your right foot and left hand at the same time, taking your time here, putting it back down. Might be easier to imagine instead of lifting your right foot and left hand that you're actually pushing down through your left foot and your right hand. See if that makes it any easier. You're just going to do the same hand and foot variation many times. And then rest. And come back to your 4 points and do the opposite. So you'll lift your left foot and your right hand many times, making it as easy as you can, as lazy as you can. Less effort even, smaller, if that makes it more sustainable. Find ways that your torso can help with this movement. And then rest. Good. Now we'll put all this together. If you are ready for that, come back to 4 points. You're going to alternate that. So more like you're walking in place on hands and feet. The right foot and left hand, then the left foot and right hand lift. See what happens in the shoulder as the weight shifts from left to right. Keep this pattern going and walk a little forward a bit on your hands and feet and then walk back. Do this as many times as is interesting to you and it's not too fatiguing. Take a rest when you need to. Good. If you're still playing with this and you feel okay, go back to that homolateral pattern where the right hand and right foot move in conjunction and the left hand and left foot. It's more stilted maybe. And then come back to that cross-lateral alternating, more like a graceful cheetah than a lumbering, I don't know, hippo. Good, and take a rest. Actually, everybody come to standing and rest in standing here. Might get a little lightheaded, so take your time. And just walk around a little bit. Feel the connection of your arms, your legs, how these relate to the center of your trunk. See if you can recall any of the sensations of crawling around on the ground as a four-legged animal. Now walking upright as a two-legged animal. Human walking is built on the foundation of learning how to walk on four limbs. So maybe there might be some translation there. So we always learn to crawl before we can walk. Just see how this feels in your body. You might notice your posture feels a little more aligned because you're utilizing your trunk a bit more in this rotational plane. Good, and then take a little standing break. Because this series is about squatting, let's just see how this changes our squat. So try dropping down into your squat. How has this changed from 20 minutes ago? Might be surprising, considering we didn't do one squat the whole lesson. But we did begin to coordinate and integrate all the moving parts that are related in a solid squatting position. Find a comfortable seat, and you can continue on to part 2 of this fundamentals of squatting if you're feeling well enough, or feel free to stop the recording, come back to part 2 at a later time. The beauty of this Feldenkrais work is that by repeating all these small movements over and over, we're retraining our bodies to become more integrated. So when you do decide to come back and do part 2 of this lesson, your nervous system remembers, and a quick reminder is all you need to pick up where you left off. So thank you.